Greetings. Welcome to Helplek Podcast, where we sit at Jesus' feet until he is formed in us. I am your brother and the fellow disciple, Emmanuel Ranganai. We continue to urge you to subscribe to our channels to keep receiving the teachings. As we continue with our wonderful teachings of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount, I would like to take this opportunity to thank my brothers and my sister who have been blessing us with teachings for the past few weeks. Today, we are beginning a two-part series on Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, where he says he did not come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. In order for us to understand what Jesus meant, we must first take some time in the first episode to explore what the law is, what the prophets represent, and how the people of Jesus' time understood these terms. This will lay a foundation that will help us fully grasp the second episode, where we will look into how Jesus fulfilled the law and the prophets. In some gospels, like the Gospel of Luke, they also talk about the writings, making the full statement as the law, the prophets, and the writings. Many people today think of the law simply as 10 commandments. However, when we look at the term law or the law of Moses, as it is referred to in some passages, you would realize it refers much more than the 10 commandments. It actually speaks of the first 5 books of the Bible, also referred to as the Pentateuch or the Torah. As for the prophets, they meant the books written by or about the prophets. So when the Jews said the law and the prophets, they were referring to the first 5 books of the Bible. That is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Together with the prophets and the writings, these formed what we know as the Old Testament. So when Jesus referred to the law and the prophets in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 17, we can also realize that he was not talking about fulfilling only the 10 commandments. He meant the entire Old Testament, everything written in it. That is every prophecy, every instruction, and every command or offer or foreshadowing. If we look into the law, the prophets, and the writings, what we call the Old Testament today, they contain some passages that could never be accomplished by any ordinary man. Let's look, for example, in the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. God promised that the seed of a woman would crush the head of a serpent. Surely no human being, no matter how righteous they were, could accomplish that. Only Jesus could undertake that responsibility to crush the head of the serpent. This already shows us that the law and the prophets, when it comes to fulfilling them, it was something divine. It's something that only God through Christ could complete. The law was also given to show mankind the nature of God they were dealing with: His holiness, justice, purity, and His standards. But the law did not have power to make people like God. It could not make people be or look like God. The law, like a white paint sign, it tells you what not to do. It teaches you something about the paint, but cannot change your desire to touch it. In the same way, the law revealed God's nature, but it did not give people the power to take on God's nature. In fact, the law actually made men's relationship with God more transactional. You do something, then God responds positively or negatively with a reward. If we read in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, it carries a lot of blessings and curses, all depending on how one behaves before God in the Old Testament. Most of us only knows the pronounced blessings, but the reality is that there is a length of message of pronounced curses for those who were going to break the commands of God. The transactional approach is like telling a child to behave in front of visitors if they want more screen time or some candies. The child may behave, but not because they understand why good behavior is important. They only behave because they want the reward. This is how many of us relate to God under the law, showing outward obedience without inward change. The law of Moses was designed to shape people from outside in. The hope was that outward actions would eventually penetrate inside and change us. But it actually failed. For example, with the Sabbath rest, you hear from the book of Amos that people were always checking their time to see if the Sabbath is ending soon so that they can go and do their trading and with manipulated scales stealing from the poor. If we read Amos chapter 8, verse 5, actually it says, "When will the new moon be over, that we may sell grain, and the Sabbath be ended, that we may market wheat?" So for the people of time of Amos, they would be sitting as if resting, but inside they were yearning for the Sabbath to end so that they can go and do their business. We can see that the law produced people who looked righteous outwardly, but not transformed inside. In the contrast, Jesus teaches that entering the kingdom of God does not come from outward change. You can attend church regularly, know many Bible verses, and take Holy Communion often, but outward actions cannot make you part of God's kingdom. God actually requires inward change, the transformation of the heart. As we come to the conclusion of this first episode, let me remind you that we have laid down a foundation that is understanding what the law and the prophets truly are. Why Jesus spoke about fulfilling them. We now know that the law revealed God's nature and exposed human limitations and created a transactional relationship that could never change the people.